I'm doing a tutorial on how to fix a dummy doorknob in which the screws have become stripped from a hollow closet door, which is exactly what has happened in this case. As you can see, when I go to try to pull on the doorknob, it just comes right out. And that's because the door is hollow, as you can hear. And over time, after you've pulled on the doorknob over and over again, it just strips out of the material. The material is only a few millimeters thick, so it doesn't hold the screws very well. One way of fixing this is to use hollow wall anchors. But the problem with that is that there aren't very many anchors out there readily available that work with these screws. And that's primarily because of the coarse threads. Now you could take them out and use other hardware, but the problem is that it wouldn't match the finish. So really the best thing is for the screws to be able to just bite into solid wood. So here's how I propose to fix this. You start by cutting out a rectangular hole on the surface of the door that contains the two screw holes, but that is also small enough to fit behind the circular back of the doorknob so that it remains hidden. Then you can take a piece of solid wood, or MDF, plywood in this case, and you can stick it into the rectangular hole, like so, and then attach it to the inside back of the door. Then you have a solid backing into which to screw the doorknob. So, how do you attach the wood to the inside back surface of the door? Well, the way I propose to do it is to start by taking a screw and screwing it into the wood. Then apply a strip of wood glue near the top edge and bottom edge of the wood. Then you can use the screw to manipulate the wood into the hole so that you can then pull the wood back so the glue presses against the inside surface of the door. Then, once that's dried for 24 hours, you can then reinforce it by using two screws near the top and near the bottom. Those screws would end up being here and here, top and bottom, on the actual door for reinforcement. And then also, the screws on the top and bottom would need to lie within the circular back of the doorknob so that they remain hidden. So how wide do you make the rectangular hole? Well, you want it to be wide enough so that it can securely contain the screws without them stripping out of the sides of the wood, but then also narrow enough so that it remains hidden behind the back face of the doorknob. In this case, that works out to be 2.5 inches. So once you figure out the width, you just need to choose the greatest possible height that's going to allow the hole to remain hidden behind the doorknob. And in my case, that turns out to be 1.5 inches. Once I figured out the dimensions, I simply cut out this piece of wood using a circular saw. So before you draw the outline of your rectangular hole, what I actually recommend doing first is taking some either frog tape like this or construction tape and pasting it over the screw holes and around the area in which you're going to draw the outline so that you don't get pencil mark on the door in the wrong places. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And then use either a center punch or a screwdriver to punch out the two holes in the tape. Use enough tape so that the face of the doorknob lies within it. Next, you're going to put the doorknob back in the holes as far as you can, like so. And then you're going to take a pencil and trace around the edge of the doorknob like so. And then, when you take the doorknob out, you see the room that you have above and below the outline of the rectangle and within the circle to put the 2 screws above and below to secure the wood in place once you've glued it. I'm going to just take this jab saw, also known as a drywall saw, and stick the pointed ends about 1 centimeter from the edge of the rectangle and just wiggle it back and forth until it goes in, being careful not to pierce the material on the other side. I'm actually going to just use a sawzall to help finish the hole. When the rectangular piece is just about ready to come out, you want to be careful to make sure that it doesn't fall down inside of the door so that you can put it back. So I'm just sticking the edge of my saw right here and prying upward on it to get that last bit there to break off. So next I'm going to draw the upper and lower boundary of the cutout, centered on the rectangular piece of wood, so that when I stick it in the hole like this, I'm able to line it up to make sure that it's not too high and it's not too low. So as you can see, I've drawn the upper and lower boundaries and they line up with the cutout. So next I'm going to drill a pilot hole for this screw, and I'm going to center it widthwise, and I'm going to drill it above this line, but as close to it as possible, because that's going to give me the greatest amount of room to be able to manipulate this block when I'm trying to stick it in the hole. So I'm just using my automatic center punch to mark the location of the pilot hole. The screw I'm using is a number 9, so I'm using a 9/64 drill bit for the pilot hole, and I'm just going to drill this all the way through. So I'm going to just drive this in now using my impact driver and stop before the screw reaches the other side. That'll do it. So this is what the wood looks like with the screw screwed in. And as you can see, when you hold it by the screw, it's easy to manipulate and maneuver into the hole like this. So next I'm going to apply a strip of glue along the upper and lower sections of the wood. I'm just using Type On 2 Ultimate here, but any wood glue should do the trick. Then I'm going to manipulate the piece of wood into the hole and make sure that these 2 lines are lined up with the upper and lower boundaries. Then I'm going to pull back on the screw and hold it for about 2 minutes until it's dry. So, as you can see now, the glue is now dry enough that the wood is able to hold itself up. And I'm just going to continue to let it dry and cure overnight so that when I go to drill the 2 holes above and below the opening, the wood is held securely enough that it doesn't fall down inside of the door. And then when I actually do go to install the screws above and below, that's going to give the wood the strength and holding power to make sure that the doorknob is held securely and can withstand pulling and twisting forces when you go to try to open the closet door. So next I'm going to mark my screw hole locations about a 1/4 inch above and below the boundaries of the opening and centered about 1 inch apart. I've now penciled on my screw locations and I'm going to use my automatic center punch to mark each hole. The glue has now had a chance to dry overnight, so I'm going to go ahead and drill my pilot holes now. I'm using a 1 1/8 inch long number 4 coarse threaded screw, so I'm going to use a 1/16 drill bit for the holes. Here we go. Gonna have to remove this screw in order to drill the other 2 holes because my drill is getting in the way here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I don't need this anymore, so it shouldn't be a problem. So now that my pilot holes are drilled, I'm gonna go ahead and install these screws now. And because the door material is thin, I'm going to make sure that the flat part of the screw does not go beneath the surface of the door material and therefore risk losing its holding power. What I should have done was remove the tape first, but I forgot to do that, so I'm going to just go ahead and do that now while I have the chance. So now I'm going to go ahead and rip the tape off that piece that I cut out and glue it back in, so that it looks like this after it's done. I'm just going to hold this down for a minute or two to give it a chance to dry. The glue's had a chance to dry, and now I'm going to go ahead and drill the pilot holes for these doorknob screws. And in this case, I'm going to need to use a 7/64 drill bit. Luckily, there's no need to mark the location of the holes because I'm just going to use the same holes that were there before. And here we go. So now, as you can see, we're basically left with a reinforced backing for the doorknob to secure itself to. You can tap on that and you can see that the wood is not falling down and the door, it's not going anywhere. It's nice and strong. So the last step is to just install the doorknob using a Phillips screwdriver. To make sure that these screws go into the wood without any problems, I'm just going to lubricate them with a bar of soap first. So as you can see, the doorknob is now securely installed. You can't see any of the screws or any of the stuff I put behind it. There are no pencil marks on the surrounding area because I used the tape. You can pull on it outward. You can move it from side to side and it stays secure. No slippage or anything. Nice and firmly secured to the wood. And most importantly, you can open and close the door like you're supposed to be. Now the squeaking is another problem I have to fix.